Here we go. Chapter 1, mindfulness. It's not just for levitating monks. Sorry. All right. So, when I think about mindfulness, I like to think about, of all things, a dog track. Whoops. All right. And here we go, the dog track. And here I am. You can see me right there. I've got my little binoculars. The dogs are going by. So if you've never had the joy of being to a dog track, well, let me enlighten you. So you're sitting there, maybe you're drinking a beer, maybe you're eating a hot dog, one of those things that came out of those rhythmic roller things, like they have at 7-Eleven. And you're sitting there with your bedding sheet, and the dogs are coming by. And you're looking and you're trying to figure out, okay, which dog is going to be the fastest so I can win a whole $5. This is going to be awesome. They parade the dogs. They then put them into that weird paddock thing, whatever it's called. I have absolutely no idea. And then it's 3, 2, 1, and all of a sudden, boom, and the dogs are off, right? And they're chasing something. They're chasing this little mechanical rabbit thing. And it goes around the track, and the dogs chase it and chase it and chase it. And the moral to the story is the dogs never get the rabbit, which is why they run. That's why they chase. And I would suggest the reason that why mindfulness is like a dog track is that that's how we live our lives. We're constantly chasing around and around and around. Maybe there's another thing that we've got to do on our cell phone, another task that needs to be ticked off. Maybe it's that next email that needs to be sent. Maybe it's that next phone call that needs to be made, whatever it is. Or it's my life is going to be better and I'm going to be happy when I change my career, or when I get that big promotion at work, or I'll be happy when I finally get that car that I've always wanted, or the house, or maybe I've got to divorce my husband, or whatever it is. And then I'll be happy then. Right? And that's how we live our lives. We're never where we're actually at. And that's mindfulness. And that's why it's so important. So I want to introduce a simple definition of mindfulness. And this is something that I've put together, having looked at tons of definitions that I've found out there in literature. And I've tried to make it as simple as possible. So mindfulness is the practice of focusing awareness on the present moment non-judgmentally. So again, going back to the track, and I'll even put it up, it's not being 3 steps ahead of where you actually are. It's being on the present moment non-judgmentally. And I'm going to talk in chapter 3 about why that judgmental piece is so important. Now, I say mindfulness is a practice. It's a practice. So when you think about, well, what is a practice? Practice is something that you get better with over time. A practice is something that improves the more you do it. And my philosophy is not that practice makes perfect, because I don't believe in such a thing as perfect, actually. I think perfect is a construct that we get mesmerized by, and then we try to reach it, and we never get there, and we beat ourselves up about it. So it's all about practice makes better. And mindfulness is something that has to be practiced every day. Maybe practice it in the morning, or practice in the afternoon, or practice in the evening, or whatever it makes sense, but it's a practice. It's a practice of being here now. So to the extent that you feel like you're not present, or you realize at some point during the day that I'm not really aware of what I'm doing or aware of where I am, my thoughts were a million miles away, just bring yourself back to the present moment, and you're practicing mindfulness. So I think it's important to make these distinctions, because the word mindfulness and meditation often get used interchangeably. And I'm going to talk about meditation quite a bit in chapter 5. But meditation is one way you practice mindfulness. So it's not mindfulness in and of itself. Because a lot of people ask me, well, do I have to meditate in order to be mindful? Absolutely not. It's just that awareness of being aware. So simple definition, not necessarily easy in practice. And that's something that I want to point out. So, we'll get some tips as we go through, all the different chapters. And I'm going to be sharing ways with you to cultivate mindfulness that are practical, that are easy to implement. All right, so here's the cost. To the extent that you're not mindful. So this is actually a picture of me. And this is a picture of me. Well, I guess you can probably tell when it is, because now that I'm looking at this and I see when I crop this, that I actually put like when this passport was issued. So it was issued in May of 2007. And at that point I was about, I guess, how old would I have been then? I don't know. I was probably in my late 20s, although I look like 50. I was running the roads. I was running myself pretty ragged, actually. And in this particular picture, I was living in London. I was working in risk management in the city. And if you wanted to find me, you can find me in one of two places back at this time. You could find me in my office, where I was working near Parliament. It was kind of a pretty nice location. Or you could actually find me in the pub. That was my other office. I was 20 or 30 pounds heavier in this picture. I smoked probably 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I quit smoking in 2009 and have not picked up a cigarette since. Looked like crap. Had a really bad hairdresser. And pretty much felt exactly how I look in this picture. Just generally kind of, disenchanted with life. But having said all that, my life ticked all the boxes. Okay. I had the fancy degrees, from all the right schools. I had an MBA from an Ivy League school in Europe. I was working in London in risk management in the city. I was living the life. I was flying to France on the weekends. I was going to Spain for wine and cheese and doing all those things. And on the outside, everything looked really good. Well, except for me, because I looked like shit. I don't know if I'm supposed to swear, but I just did. But I was a mess. I was a wreck. And I was wearing the cost of mindlessness. I was constantly chasing the next thing. I was just focused on ticking the boxes. Well, if I get this job, then I'm going to be happy. And if I make it to this level, in London, I'm going to be happy. And if I have this flat, I'm going to be happy. And none of it was the case. And I was miserable. And so I show you this photo because I'm a big believer in radical honesty. But I'm also a big believer that we all bear a cost of being mindless. And I want you, and in fact, probably a good idea to think about what that is. So I want you to reflect on that for a second. So pause this, whoever you are, and grab a sheet of paper. That's all you need, a sheet of paper and my book. And what I want you to do right now is just spend a few moments actually reflecting on what's the cost of mindlessness to me? Is it that I'm not present with my family and I'm not really experiencing the joy of my children because I'm too busy and preoccupied with other things that are going on, all right? This particular reflection isn't in the book. So just grab a sheet of paper and spend a few moments journaling. What's the cost to you? I mentioned before, it could be that you're not present, with your children and you're missing out on parts of them growing up because you're too busy and thinking about work all the time. Or maybe it's, mindless eating and you put on 40 or 50 pounds and you're wondering, okay, how do I correct this? Maybe that's your cost of mindfulness. Or maybe it's the fact that you're never making it to the gym and you've set some goals for yourself and you're not achieving them, but how is not being present costing you? I want you to spend a little bit of time thinking about that before we move on in the series. All right, great. Now that you've done that, you'll be more present, I think, throughout the entire series because, I do a lot of teaching and I do a lot of corporate education as well. And one of the things I often have folks think about, is the cost to them of not doing something and making that more visible and permanent. So I'll be referring you back to that as we work through some of these chapters because ultimately that's what's in it for you. All right. So now that we've talked a little bit about that, I want now to talk about the moments when you are mindful. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time just thinking about what mindfulness looks like for you as an individual. An interesting story that I want to tell about this one is years ago, I was actually living in the Netherlands, and I was doing my MBA at a school called Erasmus Rotterdam School of Management. Getting an MBA was fun if you ever want to do it. I had a lot of fun in the Netherlands. I won't go into all that. You probably don't need to know. But anyway, so I had made a commitment that I would do a lecture on financial accountancy for the first years. So I was in my second year, and I was getting ready to graduate, and the first years would come in, and they were a really whiny bunch, and they were really bratty, and it's like, we're not learning enough from the accountancy professor, and he's leaving out all the good stuff, and we need more information. And I said, well, I have no idea why you'd want to learn more about it, because I think it's the most boring thing in the world, but I have a master's in accountancy, and I was also a CPA. So I was like, okay, I'll volunteer to put together a lecture series, and I will actually invite whoever wants to come to this lecture series, and I will teach you accounting. I will teach you the basics of it. I'll do it in a fun way. And why I agreed to this, I have no idea. To this day, I still don't know why. But I did. I think I was drunk, actually. I used to drink a lot back then. Anyway, so I said I would do this lecture series. And so I remember that I agreed to do it like the night before, or actually the morning of, when I was coming back on the train from Amsterdam, because I've been partying till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then it dawned on me that I needed to actually have this done. So I'm here on the train with my laptop hungover, working on the PowerPoint slides. Anyway, to make a long story short, I did it, right? So I didn't think anybody would show up. I walked into the lecture hall. It was packed. There was standing room only. It was crazy. And I started to get a little nervous, but then it was showtime, right? And I was on, and I was teaching accountancy, and 3 hours went like that, which is like no hard feat considering this is accountancy. It's like the equivalent of watching paint dry, in my opinion, personally. But the time went like that. And it was one of those moments I was in the flow. I was completely in the zone. And I got a standing ovation because I'm so awesome. And what I realized after that was that I love teaching. And it was one of those things that really brought me into the zone. And so I want you to think about your zone moments, because those are your mindful moments. Those moments when you're completely in the flow, you're completely in the zone. Like I'm actually in the zone right now, talking to this camera, imagining it's you, but trying to be completely here right now. And one of the reasons I transitioned my career from what I was doing, well, I mean, I hated my career, but one of the reasons I transitioned into coaching and teaching and facilitation is because I get to do things like this all the time, and it brings me into the zone, and it actually brings me into that mindful state. So I want you to spend a little bit of time right now. So we're going to do an exercise, and it's actually in the book, and it is right here, your most mindful moments exercise. I want you to think about times when you're most in the flow, most in the zone, and you could even just close your eyes and spend about 5 minutes, and you could hit pause right now. So go ahead and do that. Just hit pause and close your eyes and think about, when are those moments for you when you're really in the zone? Okay, so I'm guessing you've been visualizing. Maybe you're having like a great snooze, but hopefully you're back. All right. And so I have a few questions for you. So go back to the book or the sheets that you just downloaded and write on there, where were you? Where were you when you were the most mindful? What were you doing? Who were you with? How did you feel? All right, so spend a little bit of time just answering those questions in your most mindful moments activity in the book. And go ahead and hit pause now, and then come back, and we're going to talk about it. All right, so I'm hoping you're back. All right, and you've answered those questions. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you with? How did you feel? So let's talk about that a little bit. All right. So these are some of the things I commonly hear. Celebrating something important with family and friends, walking in the woods, playing with my dog. For me, it would be teaching, is one of those moments for me. Holding my children, eating an amazing piece of cheesecake, or drinking a glass of wine, perhaps. All right, watching a beautiful sunset, helping someone less fortunate, working in my garden. So it depends on you, right? This is very personal. And, from my perspective, working in the garden would make me feel like angry and put out because I hate gardening and I suck at it. But for someone else, it might be one of those moments where you connect with nature and you love to grow things and, you're, I don't know, you're fertilizing and whatever you do with gardening. So I just crack myself up sometimes. I can't help it. Yeah. So, it's going to be different based on who you are. It's interesting because I was working with a client. I was doing some career coaching just a couple of days ago. And she was telling me that for her, it's being able to do photography. And she loves those moments of taking photos of children. And then when she shows the photos of the children to the parent, and she sees the joy in the eyes of the person that she's taken the photo of, or the child of, she says that's the moment for her. She's totally in the zone and she absolutely loves it. And so we're working on her building a photography business now. So again, it's starting to realize, well, what are the moments that bring this out for me in my life, and how can I amp those up? For me, it took maybe changing my career. For you, it may not be. It may be just emphasizing certain things that you do in your day-to-day life more often. So in terms of how you feel, when you're being mindful, these are the things I commonly hear. Connection. I'm feeling connected, to everyone and everything. I'm passionate, when I'm in that mindful state, when I'm in the flow, when I'm in the zone. I'm feeling purposeful. I'm feeling alive. How often do you really feel alive? So when you're hooked into mindfulness and you're practicing mindfulness, you feel more alive. Who doesn't want that? It's pretty awesome. Happy, excited, joyful, electric, ecstatic. Now, and this is not to mean that, you start practicing mindfulness and you're like happy all the time, like jazzed up on one of those like Monster energy drinks or something. No, that's not what this means. It also means that you're more present to some of the discomfort and the things that happen, sadness, frustration. But the more plugged in you are to what's going on, the more present you are in the space, the more you're actually going to have overall fulfillment in life. And that's actually what we're aiming for. A lot of us, we spend our time running away from negative emotions. And we're actually going to talk about that in chapter 4. But mindfulness doesn't mean that everything is happy peachy all the time. It just means you're present to whatever there is. But this is the upside. Those feelings of aliveness, being more purposeful, feeling like you're being more purposeful, passionate, connection. This is the reason why we're put here on this earth. So the question I have for you, if you can increase these mindfulness moments by 50%, what would the impact be in your life? Think about it. And go ahead and answer that in the book as well, because this is the next activity. And it's called Imagine the Possibilities. And it's, if I can find the Post-it, here. It's in the book. So go ahead and answer these 3 questions right now. If you could increase these moments of being in the flow, being in the zone, what would the impact be on your life? Or if you could increase them 100%, what would the impact be on your life? Or even 1,000%, what would the impact be in your life? Perhaps you'd be getting up in the morning and you'd feel, more grateful to be here. You'd have better quality time with your family. You'd be pursuing a career maybe that you really are passionate about. How would your life start to look if these mindfulness moments increased and increased and increased? It's something to think about. We don't often ask ourselves these questions. So We are done with chapter 1. And, oh, I want to introduce you just before I close out to Ed, the mystical mindfulness monk. He's going to be following me around the book and this video series. Ed is my little friend. And Ed is the reason we don't practice mindfulness, because we think we're supposed to look like Ed when we do it. You know, like a fancy monk levitating on a cloud. You know, mindfulness, it's not just for levitating monks. It's like, oh, I can't do it right. You know, I can't get it right. Mindfulness isn't for me. Mindfulness is for you. And again, that's what this entire video series is going to be helping you do, is tap into the power of mindfulness to live the life that you were born to live. So you don't have to be like Ed. And you'll be seeing him again throughout the series in order to do mindfulness and to do it well. All right, so let's just quickly close out this session. All right, and let me recap what I've been talking about. So the first thing here, mindfulness is the practice of focusing awareness on the present moment, non-judgmentally. Or in other words, it's those moments when you feel in the flow, in the zone, when time just appears to stop or stand still. All right, it's when you're really present to what's going on. Mindfulness is about listening with intention. It's about curiosity. It's about non-judgment. So I talked about non-judgment, and removing judgment allows for possibility. It's about awareness of your thoughts and emotions. It's not about losing ambition, you know, having to be zenned out and happy all the time, or getting less done. So I think there's sometimes that conception that, you know, if I'm doing this, I'm going to be like blissed out, you know, sitting on a cloud or a mountaintop somewhere. And, you know, I can only be mindful if I don't have real challenges in my life or real worries or real anxiety. And the answer is no. Mindfulness is about having all those challenges and practicing it anyway. Mindfulness is for anyone, anywhere. It's not just for Ed, the mystical mindfulness monks of this world. And it's not the what, but the how. So I didn't talk too much about this during chapter 1, but I'm going to speak about it right now. It's not what you do, it's how you do it that makes it either mindful or mindless. So for instance, you know, I could be brushing my teeth. And I could be brushing my teeth, thinking about the next latest and greatest thing I need to do, which is like taking out the trash. So let's say I'm brushing my teeth and the whole time I'm like, oh, I need to take out the trash. Oh, I need to take the dog on a walk. Oh, I need to make a peanut butter sandwich for Jimmy, you know, because he needs to school lunch or whatever it is. And next time you actually brush your teeth and just be there. Okay, so this is an activity you can practice, you know, in the morning, or hopefully in the evening too, if you brush your teeth twice a day, or maybe more times if you're really kind of weird and brush your teeth continuously throughout the day. All right, but try it. Next time you brush your teeth, be present. Feel the toothpaste on your teeth. Taste it. You know, really feel the sensation of putting the brush on your teeth. It's actually a really pleasant experience. You know, when you stand there or sit or however you brush your teeth and do it, you know, just focus and be there. And you'll find it a mindfulness practice as opposed to just one other chore that you have to do on the list of chores, right? So try that. So having said that, again, I want to underscore, it's not the what, it's the how you're doing something that makes it mindful or mindless. I could be driving mindfully, or I could be driving with my mind completely somewhere else, right? Same activity, one is mindless, one is mindful, all right? All right, we're going to come back to that in further chapters, but I think you've got it for now. So I'm going to pause here, and next up is going to be chapter 2.